Hello friends, so it's the 24th of April. Nice sunny day, plus 20. It's going to get cold the next week, and Miami actually have snow. Welcome to northwest Russia. You never know. We've been up to 27, and this weekend is going to be -2 at night anyways, so yeah. But right now it's nice and sunny and warm, so take advantage of that. There's a lot to talk about. Beginning with the fiasco in London, the non-negotiation negotiation. Now, Trump owns this war. I mean, there's no other way of getting around this. No matter how many times he says that it's Biden's war, it was Biden's war. It's now Trump's war. And partially why I say Trump owns this war, because Trump has gone with the Kellogg stupidity. Now, the Kellogg plan is dead on arrival. It was dead at conception. First and foremost is Russia. Russia, which continues to advance. Russia, which continues to grind the Ukrainians down, has absolutely no interest in giving the Ukrainians, what? Breathing space for the next war? That's exactly what that is. Even if there's a peace, the peace that the Kellogg plan proposes is not a peace. It's just a freeze in the conflict until America and the West get around to restarting that conflict on better grounds than they are right now. So there's no win-win, there's only lose for the Russian side. So of course nobody's going to take it. And it's been said as many times in many places over and over and over again. You know, the Americans in this case are coming at it like a spoiled brat. I want my candy. I want my candy. I want my candy. And no matter how many times you're told you're not going to have any candy, you're not going to have dessert until you eat your dinner, until you know they're insisting on it. So I'm not saying they're fully rational, but there's got to be some kind of logic behind why they're doing something that they know is going to be dead on arrival. And that leaves only one of two options on why they'd be doing that, and doing it publicly. So I mean, obviously you're losing face if what you want isn't going the direction you want. Plus all the flatulent noises about the U.S. leaving and just gonna be done with this. The U.S. that created the conditions for this war, including Trump, who armed up and trained up the Ukrainian army. He could have stopped all this back then, but he didn't. So now he's suddenly the peacemaker of the war that he would have more than likely, if he had his second term consecutively, would have more than likely started. Because he did nothing, absolutely nothing to lower tensions with Russia. He actually escalated tensions quite a bit. Biden already had the powder keg primed. Biden and his crew on their shift, they just went ahead and got the powder keg burning. But they didn't make the powder keg. They didn't have to. Started with Bush Senior or Junior, went to Obama, and then Trump did his part, and a big part too. So you got this powder keg that's going. Now Trump's trying to act like, oh, you know, we didn't play any of this. This is nothing of our part. We're just going to leave. Of course they're not going to leave. There's only one of two reasons they'd be playing the game that they're now planning on playing, or trying to play. It's either A, we're leaving this game, but we're going to continue feeding the Europeans with weapons, just going to get paid for it this time. You know, payment up front, here's your weapons, you can give them over to the Ukrainians to fight the Russians, while Europe is going full Nazi police state and arming up for the big war that'll probably end Europe as any kind of civilization. Because, you know, in World War I, the Russian people were infatuated with a pan-Slavic idea. We have to support all the Slavic peoples, make a pan-Slavic confederation. We'll all be allies. We're all Slavs. We'll live in one big happy family. Well, Dostoevsky warned about the smaller Slavs by trusting, except for the Serbs, pretty much so none of the others are trustable. Or history has shown that way. Like it or not, but that's how it's been. That was World War I. Plus a sense of honor, and it wasn't an ideological war. So there was restraint. To some degree, but there was restraint. Then you got World War II, where the Soviets people, Russians again, well, not only Russians, of course, but the vast majority, were indoctrinated in this, the working class thing, and that the working class in Germany and in Hungary and all these other Hitler allies had been tricked into fighting this war against the working class of Russia or Soviet Union, and they all just want to be left alone and live in fraternal brotherhood. And a lot of soldiers, when they got into Germany, started looking at the way the Germans have been living, started figuring out that there's something ain't right with this whole theory. But that's what the Soviet Union pushed, and that's what the theory was. And that's what we're going to stick with. There's none of that this time around. There's none of that. There's a lot of realization of realpolitik. There's a lot of realization from the Russian people just how much many, and I'd say the majority of Europeans really, really hate us, despise us, don't see us as human beings. And all this suppressed racism against anybody else has been allowed to flow out uncontrollably against Russians. And Russians are paying attention. Don't think they're not. And you see it in the media constantly. So, and the fact that these governments get revoted, the fact that the people aren't particularly in the streets. Now, there are a lot of people, particularly most of the people listening to my podcast, though I've got a few trolls trolling around. One Spanish one from in the Baltics. Anyways, he's supposedly Spanish. We'll see. But we got a few trolls flowing around the edges. But the majority of the people listening to this are woken up. Not woke, woken up. But the majority of their countrymen aren't. Not enough that they would actually go do something about it. Not enough to stop the unrushing World War. Just not enough. And once that World War starts, you're not going to have demonstrations. You're not going to have anything. You already live in a police state. I mean, realistically, European democracy is banning elections, banning winning candidates, of pulling off new 500,000 votes to change election results, banning parties, assassinating elected leaders, trying to deny vote to member states. This is putting people in jail for commentary on the internet. Not commentary screaming, let's have a revolution, but commentary that doesn't fit their woke agenda. This is European democracy. Not much to look at. I mean, Hitler had a Bundestag, a Reichstag. He was a chancellor. He went and got the rubber. Granted, it was a rubber stamp, but he got a vote on everything he wanted to do. Yeah, it went up for vote. That's right. So at least, the outer shell of a, quote, republican system of sorts was still there. Just like it's still there in Europe today. Though long ago, it's basically a defunct organism. I mean, hell, the Roman Empire was an empire with an emperor for 200 years before they really started calling it an empire. We still call it the Roman Republic. Even though, again, it was a rubber stamp organization. We're rushing this war. Oh, and then you got Zelensky, of course, who's the epitome of European values. He tells us that, and the unelected ownership of Europe in Brussels tells us that all the time. That a guy that banned elections for the second time and extended martial law. And as Zelensky said, but people don't want elections. If they want elections, they can change their citizenship. I'm sure quite a few of them would line up right now and change their citizenship. Of course, if they did that, they'd just be thrown to the front, and their citizenship would become worm bait. So we've got that. Somewhere out there is the madman who didn't play his lines. So either Trump is planning on leaving this behind, so to speak, and continuing to supply this, just selling weapons to the NATO countries, and they in turn handed it over to Ukraine while they reindustrialize their military segment. Or they needed to blame Russia on saying no to this dead on arrival, dead at conception plan. I mean, as much as Kellogg is an ideologue of the Cold War and hates Russians, and is just he's a sociopath. Well, I won't say he's a sociopath, but he's a simp for Zelensky, or at least seems to be. But he definitely hates Russians. He's still absolutely in the height of the Cold War mentality. And by the way, like most American generals, has absolutely no clue of the state of the American military. It really is. There really are some clueless people. There was a colonel, a retired colonel, I cannot remember his name. He's gone on to meet Jesus since then. But he used to he was a big-time critic of the U.S. military back in the 90s and the 80s, particularly the 90s. And he coined a really good phrase for the American generals class, and that was the powdered princes. And these guys are powdered princes, especially the 4 stars. 44 4-stars. And each of them have staffs up to 1,000 people. Let that sink in. Well, plenty of 3, 2, 1-stars, full-bird colonels running around kissing their arses. I mean, these guys arrive like a prince, with air-conditioned this, air-conditioned that, big cars, and so on and so on. They don't travel just... They are the aristocracy, or part of the aristocracy of the American oligarchical system. Anybody still buying into America as a republic, okay, sure. And other fairy tales for small children. So the other option was, if Russia denies this, says no, and of course Russia would, because this has absolutely nothing for Russia in it. Oh, we'll recognize Crimea, but we're not going to recognize the other 4 sections. We'll freeze the line. We'll rearm Ukraine and put industry in there and create the 4th Ukrainian army, and pump in lots of NATO troops and bases. And, we may relieve a few sanctions that you didn't even ask to have relieved, because, you don't really give a damn about the American sanctions. But we'll relieve a few sanctions, maybe. We'll look into sanction relief. I think that was the exact terminology. Wow. And can we have a couple necklaces of beads, too? And maybe some shiny glass? We can see a reflection. Because that is literally on the level that the West considers talking with Russia. I mean, that literally is the level. And even when their weapons are burning, their mercs are rotting in the ground along with the Ukrainian meat, and even with all that, they will never be able to admit that they've been bested, because we're subhuman to them, and a subhuman can never best them. I mean, a lot of the Nazi ideologues back up to 1945 held those views. You think, when Hitler and all those leadership was screaming about wonder weapons, Wunderwaffen, that it was just falling on deaf ears? No, people believed in this crap. Just the next Wunderwaffen is going to be the one that's going to win us the war. And they continued believing it. And when the Red Army arrived in Berlin, it was such a mental crash for these people. They finally had to face the reality: the war's over. Germany's lost. Germany's been destroyed. They started shooting themselves. Of course, they started shooting their kids and their wives too. Well, the wives usually did it. They went along with the suicide. The kids didn't have much of a choice. I mean, there were mass suicides of Nazis, and Nazi officials, and regular German Nazis. Regular working class people all over Berlin, all over these cities, because their bubble reality got popped. And we're dealing with the exact same type of bubble reality on the exact same basis. Just, 80 years later. Oh, nothing really has changed. Or I'm sorry, is it 80? Yeah, 80 years later. Nothing really changed. Nothing. So, that's where we're at with these people. And there's a lot of society that's on the same thing. Because, and this is the difference. The Russians look at us like, why are you going to try again? We've beaten you back from Moscow. We destroyed you here. We destroyed you there. The only time Moscow was taken was from the west was by Napoleon, and he walked into a burning city where his army starved before they started their big retreat back west, getting destroyed all along that retreat. Well, for the European mindset is, we came pretty close. We could do it again. Maybe this time we'll take it. We'll take them all. So it's like a gambler, at a roulette table. Well, this time we can take it. So I think Trump's team, to get back to where we were, my rattling off on a tangent, I think Trump's team, really what they wanted was Russia to say no. Because that unties their hands not to leave, but to start feeding the Ukrainians and sticking their fingers. See, the Russians don't want peace. The Russians don't want peace. They want war. And we're going to have to support Ukraine. After all, we didn't want to. It wasn't part of our plan. We thought we'd have peace by now. But you see those rotten bastard Russians? Yeah, well, Oh, I know they've got their issues about why they started this war, but it's all lies. We've come to understand that. Biden was right. This is our war now, and we're going to continue making money off of it. There's still some Ukrainian children left that can be thrown in. And by the way, there was an audit done recently in Ukraine on the quantity of 18 to 19-year-olds. Not the quality, but the quantity that can be thrown into the meat grinder and exterminated. And they found out that there's only 200,000 in that 2-year category. That's it. All the other ones, first of all, there's a collapse in birth rates anyways, and that's part of that leading, or not even leading, that's part of that demographical collapse. And a very large chunk of those 18, 19-year-olds, they got out. Their parents saw the writing on the wall. They got them out. So, that's what we're at that point. It's only 200,000. And they'll go into the 16, 17-year-olds, 15, 14-year-olds. There's already screams up and down the Rada, by the way, most of them are military age, but of course they're not going to go because they're too important to sit in the Rada, along with all their assistants and secretaries and blowjob givers to go anywhere and do anything for the great Ukrainian Reich. So there's really screams up and down the Rada to send in all the women. And some Ukrainians have dared to finally have a thought. That usually happens when they're a POW or they're totally shit out of luck and surrounded. They finally had a thought that this isn't a war about Russia. This is a war about the extermination of the Ukrainian people. Or the Russian people in Ukraine, which is the population of Ukraine. So, yes, first they dumbed you down, and you did it, most of you went willingly, and now they're just exterminating you. They prepped you, and now you're going off to die, like in mass. And that land is going to go to somebody else, because look, Ukraine is, if in the best case scenario, Ukraine is a resource base, agricultural, and to some degree a mineral resource base. Well, even in basic primitive agriculture, you really didn't need that many people to do it. On average, you got maybe 10% of the population in agriculture and resource extraction. And now with the modern technology, with drones, you don't even need that many. You really don't need many people to farm a field, a big field, giant wheat fields, because everything's automated. You bring the new technology, you don't need many people. You bring your own workers, and you don't need those pesky aborigines running around thinking that this is their country and they own that country and they have something to say about that country and something else like that. Yeah, you don't need that. So there. That's how that rolls. But yeah, some Ukrainians finally, after 3 years of this war, have started getting the idea that, they're just trying to exterminate us. Suicide the Ukrainians by Russian tank is the name of this game. Like, really? Wow, you guys are smart. Took you a while to figure that one out. They've been basically spitting that in your face for the last year and a half out in the open. But the Trump administration, I think, is they were thinking, especially maybe not Trump himself, though I'm wobbly on whether I believe that or not. But definitely the Rubio, the Kellogg gang, maybe Hexeth, that we get the Russians to say no, and then we just blame everything on the Russians and that evil Putin. And then we can continue selling. We continue making money. It's our turn to earn, God blessed. Democrats have been earning off this long enough. It's time for us to earn. Because, hey, that's what America's about. Mass murder and earning. Look at the history of just even the last 30 years. You take any offense of what I say. We could go from the very beginning. But anyways, so Zelensky spoiled that. Because when you're dealing with a narco, the problem with a narco, like any narco, is they're unpredictable. Was it a good cocaine run or a bad cocaine run? I mean, was the package a good package that the American ambassador or whomever brought him this time around, or a bad one? Did he do enough lines or maybe too many lines? Or did the wind just blow up his arse and he just rattled off? And he's offended enough that nobody wants to invite him, right? So it's Yermak, his second in command, who, by the way, has no official office, but he's second in command. The British have started undermining Yermak because he's gotten too close to the Americans. The Americans want Poroshenko, so Zelensky arrested Poroshenko. The British want Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny is relatively safe right now in England. Well, probably not safe from being assassinated or something like that, but, we'll see what happens with that. But Zaluzhny is no man of peace either. He's just as much of a Nazi, and he just wants that war as much as, support that war just as much as anyone else. So, we'll go back to this point, is the cokehead spouted off. He was already upset that after his great performance with Trump, again, too much coke and listening to the British crackheads. The cokehead got on Trump's nerves and Vance's nerves, so there's an ego battle right there between those three. So they haven't been inviting him. It's all Yermak. Zelensky's traveling oftentimes. He loves to travel. For a president in a war situation, you'd think most of the time he'd be sitting at home controlling, running the country. But no, he spends almost as much time overseas or outside the borders of Ukraine as your average American president spends on the golf course, or your average Congress critter spends anywhere but working. Yeah, that much. And that's a lot that if anybody understands what I'm saying. So he flat out said, he nuked Kellogg's plan, insulted Kellogg too quite a bit, nuked Kellogg's plan outright before Russia could say no. So now it's Zelensky's fault this dead on arrival, dead at conception plan isn't going anywhere. It's all Zelensky's fault. Thank you, Zelensky. That's the problem with cokeheads. You really can't control them very well. You just never know what they're gonna say. The narco green goblin, he's got a mind of his own, damn it, and I'm gonna tell you what it is, or at least the voices in my head are telling me today what to say, and that's how it is, and that's how it is. So the narco green goblin spouted out, and he beat Russia to the punch. So it's going to be interesting to see how America walks away. But Trump's taking a lot of ownership in this war, whether he likes it or not. He could have gotten out of it early if he really wanted to get out of it. But the vast majority of these powdered princes are telling incredibly insane things to the U.S. Congress. The U.S. Congress is not overly educated to begin with. The majority of those people are rather stupid. I mean, Cortez is going to be the next next candidate, more likely, for president from the Democratic side. I mean, it gets worse. Biden was a better candidate than she is. I mean, the woman is, she makes pet rocks look smart, okay? And that's going to be the candidate from the Democratic wing of the one bird, two wing American political system? Seriously? I mean, that's just amazing. It's just, they go that low, Cortez. Okay, so you couldn't really find anybody else. She's going to be the candidate. My God, you'd have a better chance of Hillary Clinton. I don't think that woman. Well, I don't know. I won't say she couldn't lead a pack full of virgins if she had to a whorehouse if she had a fistful of hundreds. I won't go that far. I mean, the Democrats are pretty damn stupid, even by standards of 21% of Americans being absolutely illiterate. By the way, statistics from the U.S. for last year. Go look it up if you don't believe me. Another 32% reading at a 6th grade level or lower. 6th grade level U.S. is like, I don't know, about 3rd grade, end of 3rd grade in Russia. So half the U.S. population, I'm not talking about illegals and such, but half the U.S. population is reading at a 3rd, 4th grade level or lower. Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah. What can you say for that? But so Cortez, yeah. I'm gonna enjoy those presidential debates. So if Jack and Jill went up the hill, what were they doing with a bucket of water? Well, I stand for buckets of water because buckets of water are important. But was Jack a Jack and Jill a Jill? And how do we define Jack and Jill? The debates of America. Oh, yeah, the comedy club is just going to be getting better and better. But then, I mean, look, here's another thing to show the decline of the empire. So, the Navy quietly killed off the Halo program. And for those of you who are wondering what the hell the Halo program was, that was the Navy's program for hyper velocity missiles, hypersonic missiles. Now, for a hypersonic missile, the minimum criteria is Mach 5 and controllable flight. So it's not just a rocket that goes straight out or ballistically, it's a controlled missile flight. U.S. barely broke on a couple different programs that criteria. It's not... Russia with the Oreshnik is in the 3rd generation. U.S. is breaking in the 1st generation. But we know why, because as Trump told us, very bad people came and stole the copy of the American missile technology and because that now the very bad people, I'm assuming that's Russia and China, have hypersonics, and Trump and company do not, but the U.S. does not. I guess they burned up the only backup copies too when they stole those copies. So, anyways, so in 24, quietly, the U.S. Air Force killed off the Arrow program, which was the American Air Force's hypersonic missile program. Now, the Navy's missile program is basically trying to copy the Zircon, which is in wide use and in wide distribution in the Russian Navy. There's even been a new submarine class built just for the Zircon missile, whether nuclear warhead or non-nuclear warhead. So a submarine can go off the coast of the U.S., 300 kilometers off the coast of the U.S., fire a Zircon hypersonic missile with a nuclear payload and hit Washington in about 5 minutes. Less than that, really. And itself be quite a ways off from any effects of the blast. So by the time people figure out, oh crap, something's happening, there's a mushroom cloud. So, yeah. So these two programs have been killed off, and they were the big promising programs. And they're both been killed off for one reason, same reason. Too expensive. So the U.S. has been trying to develop hypersonic missiles since the early 2000s. So in almost 25 years, it's been a failure. So when Russia had when Russia developed hypersonic missiles, even showed it on video, it was all CGI, all CGI, all CGI. They can't have it, because if we can't do it, they sure as hell can't do it. We've got the big bucks and the printing press, and well, they don't, and no way in hell they could do it. Well, Russia did it, and did it again, and did it again, and did it again. So the Chinese, and well, possibly so have the Iranians. The U.S. hasn't. Now, there's still some DARPA programs going on, but the main two programs have been axed. Too expensive. Much money, no results. Or very minimal results. So, the Congressional Research Center, that's Congress's research center, put out a 2025 report on hypersonic weapons. And I quote, this is for 2025, this year. When they're describing hypersonic missiles, or hypersonic technology in the hands of Russia and China. Russia and China may have hypersonic weapons. May. So the Oreshnik, all the Zircons, all the Kinzhals smacking up and down on Ukraine, those are just all may. They're really not hypersonics. You're not seeing what you're seeing. It's all may. Maybe it's all CGI. That's what they're saying. We CGI usually had a bunch of NATO officers get wiped out by Kinzhal. They're really all alive, or we CGI'd, I don't know. Maybe they never existed. This is the ridiculous level of denial that's in the U.S. Congress and surrounding these people. Don't worry, we can't build a hypersonic because they may have them and may not. And don't worry. And then it goes on to say, but don't worry, because those missiles are all meant for nuclear warheads, so they're not very accurate. You know, is it any surprise then that they get somebody like General Cavoli who's saying, the Ukraine could still win? Or you get Petraeus with the Afghan army will stand with or without us and will not be defeated, and so on and so on and so on. I mean, obviously, to anybody that's got any kind of mental capacity for analytics of the basis of those basic kind, you got to figure out that they're not promoting generals in the U.S. based on aptitude. That's pretty damn obvious. There must be other characteristics that they're promoting them on, because it definitely isn't mental aptitude or an anchorage in reality. So that's how that goes. And that's how that goes. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna end it here. I've probably overloaded your brains for a while with my bantering, and if I bored you, I apologize. But if I'm boring you, you probably wouldn't be listening to this anyways. So, God bless. Христос воскресе, Christ is risen.